I'd like to call the meeting of Tomahawk School Board to order, please. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Yep. Capeman. Huseby.
Yes.
Kirsch.
Yes.
Kissinger Wolf.
Yes.
Long.
Yes.
Screwball.
Yes.
Swenny.
Yes.
Baloo.
Yes.
Zimmerman.
Yes. I believe we have a quorum.
Yep.
First agenda item to approve is the adoption of the agenda. So I entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I so move.
Second.
We have a motion second to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Staff recognition. We have two individuals that we would like to recognize. The first one is Megan Parker, or Barker. That's what that's Parker? Well, let's start again. The board would like to recognize Megan Barker for recent leadership work with the Elementary Student Council. Megan stresses the importance of leadership and community service to the Student Council, and through their efforts, the elementary school was able to raise $2,000 for the Never Forgotten Honor Flight. Terrific. This memory helped pay for 4 veterans to participate in this trip. Mrs. Barker also guided the Student Council as they raised $385 for the Caps for Kids. This fundraiser benefits students that are battling cancer. Mrs. Barker makes these activities fun for the students and also rewarding as they experience the importance of being in service to others. Megan's efforts begin in the elementary school but always extend beyond our school to benefit our community in a positive way. Megan isn't able to be here this evening, but I'll make sure that she gets the certificate and the pin. I'll give this to you.
This one.
Oh, that sounds good. Thank you. So. The next one, I had absolutely nothing to do with the development of this particular individual. She was a former student of mine, and she's successful despite Shirley Durlin. The board would also like to recognize Shirley Durlin. Shirley has taken over leadership of the middle school positive behavior intervention and supports team this year. She has taken on this new role with initiative and enthusiasm. Under Shirley's leadership, the PBIS team has implemented a new PBIS reward system. She is also heading up our quarterly celebrations and building level challenges. For our first quarterly celebration activity, which was a student versus staff basketball game and lighting challenge, she included a community service opponent. Students participated in a fundraiser for the community Thanksgiving dinner through a penny war and food drive. Shirley also brought in placements for students to decorate for the dinner as an enrichment activity. Students were able to present the food drive and monetary donations to the organizers of the community dinner at halftime of the basketball game on November 18th. So Shirley, if you please come forward.
Appreciate it.
Ron, I take partial credit for her success for the time she worked with me at
That's
Church.
right, that's right. Oh my gosh, here. Gonna take a trip down memory lane, play softball with kids. Softball. Thank you, I
Is she in
appreciate
your
it.
class, Bob?
Oh my God.
No, I am Mrs. Jacobson.
Okay, thank you.
That's right, I wish for you, Bob. Wish
Pushing the
for you.
envelope.
Did you
I got
get
enough
it?
problems aging myself. Okay, and congratulations to both individuals, well deserved. Okay, public comment, any public comment this evening?
Regan Kovacic, Town of Harrison. the referendum passed by a slim margin again, and it was 3 times going through. And so I would suggest that the administration positions that are become empty, that do not be filled, and that any teacher vacant positions should be filled, because that is directly working with the students. The also thing is, I suggest is to make sure you take care of the buildings, because they needs to stand here for at least another 25 years. I'd like to know what the cost was for putting through the referendum 3 times. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have 2 things, please.
Yes.
First, I'd like to acknowledge that Megan Schultz received 2nd team All-American honors by the American Volleyball Coaches Association. To the best of my knowledge, she's the first one to receive All-American honors. The second is one of our alumni, Kate Riley, is now a member of UW-Madison's rowing team. And to the best of my knowledge, she's the only one that's ever gone that way. So I want to acknowledge both those people.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, next item is the approve the consent agenda. A number of items: approve the minutes from the regular meeting on November 8th, 2022. Approve the minutes from the closed session on November 8th, 2022. Approve the minutes from the policy committee meeting on November 9th, 2022. Approve the invoices from November 5th, 2022 to December 9th, 2022. Employment and contract adjustments, and then new positions, new positions. Okay, so I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda and donations. I'm sorry, I missed that one. Approve the consent agenda as presented.
So move.
I'll second it.
A motion second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Staff reports. I think, Teresa, we're gonna
Yes,
skip to you right away. Okay?
yes. And are there any questions on my general report? I'll probably just highlight one of the items, since it pertains to the next presentation I'm going to give, is we have approved Zello and then purchased an addition to Zello. It's called Methodize. And if a student were to purchase this on their own, if they could, it would be about $250 per person. But the school district purchased it in bulk, and it is an accessible tool inside of Zello for students who are juniors to access ACT study materials. And the other benefit is it really aids our teachers in seeing what the assessment is like, and they can use it as much or as little as they would like to for test prep and student development in preparation for ACT and rigorous content, because the questions are good questions in the tools. So that was a great addition this year, and we are going to do the ACT online this year, so it's also equal preparation and modality as well as content. So we're excited about that. We're rolling that out to juniors this week through their English class. Any questions on that? Okay. All right. The state report cards were released last month after the school board meeting, so this is the first time it's been unembargoed content to share with you. So of the content that is featured in the report card, I'll summarize what the report card contains. The things that are new to state reporting this year are the closing gaps priority area is replaced with target group. And the target group is defined in 3 ways. One is the bottom 25% of students, and then another area is the students in target groups that were not proficient on previous state tests, and then students who are identified as in the bottom 25% of the DLM. So those become our target groups as defined. Then course and program data, grades 9 through 12. This includes post-secondary preparation and arts courses and programs. And then I did put a link in my report so you could get to them, but we do publish these on our website, so they're readily available, so no one has to go digging through the DPI layers of their website to get to them. So this was an excerpt that I found in the Milwaukee Journal publication that showed last year to this year scores. And there is, I'm gonna go back one. Notice that huge precautionary COVID rectangle? That's real. And the Milwaukee Journal article that I took this next excerpt from was mostly about the fact that many, many, many schools showed a decline and are still recovering from COVID. So I think that disclaimer saying we're all coming off, we're still rebounding is very real. And it's part of our discussions all the time because we see it. So the report cards themselves are laid out. These slides will show you just sections of the report cards as they go down. I'm going to feature the district report card so that you can see the components. I won't go through every school's report card. So the first page gives you district details. And you can see there the grades we serve and our total enrollment in our district, and then the percent of our students who are open enrolled to the district. Then the next section on every single one of the report cards is the student groups, and that tells us several things, our demographics, as well as our students identified district-wide with disabilities and our economically disadvantaged amount for the district, as well as the percent of English learners we have across the district. The next section on every report card is showing us the 4 priority areas. And these, you can see, are defined as achievement, growth, and those target groups that I just defined, and then on track to graduation. And if you looked at our report cards by building, you would see that this pie is divided differently. And if you do look across the state at a variety of report cards, you'll see the pies look very different. And I'll show you the calculator that is used in determining how those priority areas get weighted, because it's pretty significant. So if this is the calculator, and if I go in here, I'm gonna grab my notes. Our elementary school is at over 40% poverty, and our elementary school has all of these priority areas evident, and our elementary school has 3rd graders. So if I were to click on all those components that are evident in our elementary school, growth, they have the target groups, then I put in their poverty, they're 47.6. Then you will see that these numbers here shift, and that means that pie, those sections of the pie shift. So what you can see by that, the sections of the pie shift, right? You will see so how much weight is given to achievement. Did I touch that? Yes, I did. So weight given to achievement versus growth, and then the target group outcomes versus on track for graduation. So why that is significant is because our Tomahawk Elementary is heavily weighted in the priority area of growth. And we see great growth in our kids. That's why you see such a high score on our report card. Our achievement at elementary is rated lower. Now the theory behind that is that students who come into a district with high economic disadvantage and often not as high scores out of the gate or experiences out of the gate have greater to grow. So therefore, a district with high economic disadvantage status values their growth more, knowing that we have to get great growth, and it doesn't penalize us for not having achievement, knowing that it's going to take us longer to get our students to high levels of achievement. So this is a little different when you go to each building because they have different features. So if I were to go into the middle school, they obviously have 8th graders versus 3rd grade, right? And their poverty is 36.9. So what I would just move this down, and you would see a different weighting that matches theirs. You should. Yeah, there you did. So theirs is much more equal slices of the pie there because their poverty or their socioeconomic status is less. So it's achievement and growth that are fairly equally weighted with the other 2 areas. Now, if I go to the high school doesn't have a growth measure because they don't have two of the same types of assessments in a row, and they don't have 8th graders. And then typically, all high schools have less poverty than the lower, so we keep going. So you can see that how their pie would shift again, and I don't need to show you all that. But the priority areas are a big deal in understanding that, because you can have very different achievement across the district and very different poverty. And then when we get to another area of the scorecard, I'll show you another calculation that is in the report card that also takes into consideration variables outside of a school district's control. And even though they're not calculated in the score, they're additional data that we see when we look at how we can get better and how we compare to others around the state. Questions so far? All right.
So we have statistically said that economics has a direct impact on educational achievement
Yes,
and growth.
yes.
And that's has that number changed at all? And
Which number?
are we seeing more economic issues particularly in our district, as the years pass? Are we growing in
That's
that
a
number?
great question. I haven't seen our economic disadvantage numbers change a ton in my
Okay.
time here. But they're not low, but they're not as high as I've seen
No.
either. But they present challenges for us, no doubt. And I think we have to keep reminding our teachers that they're working really hard to get the growth they're getting, and we need to celebrate that, to find our wins. And we literally have to remind ourselves to do that, because if we beat ourselves over the head with just our achievement score, it can be defeating, because our teachers are working very hard.
Thank you.
This next area is talking about the priority area scores in detail in relation to our target groups and our non-target groups. So we look at this and we say, okay, of our students who don't have one or more of these variables that would cause us to see a correlation of achievement, we look at these and we say, how are our non-targeted groups doing compared to our target groups? And by that, we know we're working very hard for all of our kids to succeed. So when you hear all of us stand up here and say, all students, we're working to include our students in our core classrooms, access to core content, that we want accommodations in place, that we want to understand our learners more. It's because we don't want inequity in our students' opportunity to grow and achieve in our district. Because we can look very much at our target groups aren't performing as well as our non-target groups. So the students in our schools that aren't within those target groups. I wanted to clarify, and if you looked at all of our scorecards, they're very good. They exceeds expectations, right? They all do. And so we're very proud of that, but I wanted you to see the breakdown in that. The report cards are over, most of the data that you see in the report cards are over a 3-year period. So it's statistically easing our scores whichever way we go. So you don't see huge fluctuations in our report cards typically. We did have, actually I do want to show you, I'll go back. I'll feature our high school. So our high school, as I showed you, has all high school report cards across the state of Wisconsin, so here's their pie chart, right? Have additional data that is reported in their report card that, well, I should show you these. These show in another way graphically where our students fall on the state assessments. And we typically analyze this data pretty extensively every year internally to see where our kids are falling. And the points that we actually get a half a point for students who fall in this yellow category, and we get a full point if the students fall in the proficient category, and we get 1.5 points if a student is in the advanced category. And then there's a multiplication and a black box, and then out they spit our score. And so that's how that is calculated, but this is a nice graphic to see where our students fall. And below that, we have broken down information into those target groups. So when I talk about our minority groups, and when I talk over the last 3 years, and then I talk about advanced, proficient, basic, and where those points get calculated, this is a map of who fell where and how we get those points. If there are less than 20 students in a group, they aren't listed here. It's redacted because it's identifiable if there's less than 20. So getting into that, then you can see a breakdown of the priority area. And this is that other area I was going to talk to you briefly about. This is a value added measure. And these calculations use, it's a statistics linear regression model, where they take the variable of student growth and they take these other variables that a school can't control, like if a student is English language learner, or if a student is of a low socioeconomic background. And they take these variables and they compare our growth, those students' growth, to other students around the state that have these same variables. And so when they do that, 3 is average, and anything above 3 is saying you're making greater growth with those students than is typical around the state. So it's just a way of looking again at your population and you're saying, are you serving all your students well? So if we were below a 3, you would actually see a box over here that was clear versus blue. So this one actually looks very good. All right, and this is for each of the 4 priority areas, so I'm going to keep going down. What I want to show you here is on the high school, there's a section called post-secondary preparation, and this comes from 2021 data. And what you can see in here is how the Tomahawk School District compares to the state. We had an error in our high school report card this year. You can see this. The year prior, our high school was over 5%, 5.3% I believe, and the state was at 1.4. And here the state is at 2.8, and we look like we're at 0, but we're probably well above a 5, right? So we had to submit a data error letter to the state, and we also made that public on our website. And the error has been corrected in our SIS, and there won't be coding errors anymore, right? We got that figured out. And we just wanted to point that out to you, know that we made that public as well. So the data that fills the scorecard is pulled in a snapshot, and it's at one point in time. So even though we can change our data, we can't change what that little snap looks like at that point in time. All right, questions? That was a lot of information.
Any questions? I got it.
Yes, please.
If you don't mind. First of all, I don't want to belittle or not recognize what the teachers are doing, what administration, what the school system's doing. I guess one of my problems is the state. I look at that and I see the main areas that they look at in subject matter is math and English language, okay? And being a former math teacher, that's great. But we are trying to develop the whole student. And I wish the state would try to do the same thing with the entire subject curriculum in the school system. Whether it's the arts, whether it's social studies, tech ed, whatever. I wish they would look at the whole thing, because that's what we're looking at in our strategic plan,
Yes.
is the whole student. And so I'm on my soapbox with the state more than anything else that bothers me about these report cards and stuff. They pick two areas, and that's what the whole thing's measured by. And I'd like to see it measured by the whole curriculum and the student, what comes out of this high school as a whole student and a citizen coming out. And I don't think the state does that, you
Right.
know. But yeah, I guess the other part, more specific to us, is most of you know how I think sometimes is I like to see continuous improvement. And we've got scores I see of elementary 73, high school 73.2, middle school 71, which exceeds expectations. What is the cutoff? First, what's the cutoff if we don't exceed expectations? I assume this is based on a score of 100. Is that correct, Reese?
Well, I can show you the scale. There is a scale. Yo, keep going and I'll find it.
Well, I'm just assuming that, and if I'm wrong, please let me know, but I'm assuming it's like 70. It would be, if you get 70 or above, you exceed. Maybe it's 65, I don't know, whatever it is. But I guess the other main question I have is what do you need administration-wise from the school board? What do we need to do to get to the next level? To continuously improve and get beyond where we're at now, you know? I mean, that's what I look at. I'm not trying to demean what's happening. I'm just saying, how do we get better?
Right.
How do we keep getting better all the time? Because I think that's what we want to do. My thought process, if you're not improving, you're staying stagnant, you're falling behind. And that's how I think sometimes, but I guess, you know, maybe you don't have that answer now, but, you know, how do we get better? Even better than what we're doing, you know? So that, you know, we're at, if it's based on 100, we're at 98.4. And if you came in with a 98.4, I'm gonna ask you the same question. How do we get better? You know? But, I say that, but again, I don't want to demean what's going on. I think the teachers and the staff are doing a great job to get us where we're at, but let's keep getting better. Let's not be happy with where we're at. And that's, sorry.
Could I be correct, Teresa, in saying that that is a dynamic number, however, because it's based on a linear regression and we bring in all those other variables, and so we might be extremely high because an underlying variable drove the score. If I'm understanding you, what we bring in to create these percentages and these grades is a dynamic process. It's not a standard process where we use 5 every single year. We use 4 every single year for each of those categories. So we might be doing everything right, but if the underlying variables should change significantly, it could alter our score significantly. Although our educational programming would still be, I'm gonna say, good and above average. Am I understanding that right?
And I think that's why, to a degree, yes, and I think that's why it's over a 3-year period, so that there's some easing to that, so you can see those shifts, right, and not absorb all that with a big swing. Especially a district our size that has, you know, around 75 to 100 kids per class, right? Here is you're right, based on 100. I don't have answers for you, but in our strategic plan, I will tell you we're addressing the areas we have seen historically. So like when you look at pupil services, special ed, and in our work with general ed, we know that there are very few kids who have been basic. There are several kids who are basic, very few kids who are proficient that have an IEP in our district. So working to have those students have access to the core are exactly what we need to do to help those students achieve and grow, right? So they show up statistically here, but for the benefit of those students. So when you see what's built into our strategic plan now, it's knowing the components of what's making up growth and achievement and how we can address that. The fact that we're addressing our numeracy and literacy is directly related there. We fully agree with the whole child. In fact, you heard the principals report to you already of redefining ready and where we're going with our local report card ourselves. So when you look at our initiatives around ELA, when you look at our, all the initiatives we have in our strategic plan, my goal and the district goal is to have more, all the students who were not proficient last year in grades 3 through 8 make more than a year's worth of growth this year. So hopefully they're bumping up from one category to the next. So everything that we have in that strategic plan is specifically looking to grow these metrics.
Okay, great. That's, like I said, I just think that we need to look at more than just math and English
Oh, agree.
language.
We agree.
You know?
We all agree. No one's gonna disagree with you over there.
I wanna, so Wendell and I had a lengthy conversation last week, maybe the week before, something about surrounding the scorecards, and I actually saw the difference between the chart that you just showed and our scorecard, and I questioned why are we on, you know, why is this data not matching up? And we had a very interesting conversation. And so I actually did some digging on my own just to go back more than 3 years and say, where were we 5 years ago? Where were we 9 years ago, right? And I would say that, you know, we tracked in that 78, 79, 80 range for a solid period of time. And our conversation, I said, that raises red flags for me, right? I understand what COVID did. It's not that I don't understand. I understand that we have a newer staff. I understand the impact of that. But it should still, as a board, raise red flags. That's our responsibility, right? And so I was very pleased with Wendell's, to your credit, response in the importance of tying our strategic plan and driving that down to the levels that we're driving it down to, because that's what's going to ultimately make sure everybody's focused on these goals that are, you know, on these types of goals. So I thank you for your time and that, you know, lengthy conversation, which was a really good conversation. And I want to say thank you to all of you guys for the work that you're doing on those strategic goals and driving that down to the classroom level, because that's where it's going to matter.
I think too, what's happening is there is a lot of help for our special needs students. And you have those gifted and those higher level students usually have a self-motivation, they have parents that are involved. It's that middle group that doesn't receive support outside of the classroom teacher that we are missing, in my opinion. Coming from the classroom, you know, you'd say, well, can we get help for this student because they're struggling in this area? Well, they're not spec ed, and this and that, and, you know, you try to give them that attention in the classroom, but those are the students, I think, that we need to really, you know, tone into and say, hey, what can we do as a district for those students?
We fully agree with that, and that's why you heard both middle school and elementary report on WIN this year. What I need is that time in the day where we're saying, okay, it's not business as usual and keeping the core moving forward. It's what do we need for some of the attention to the lagging skills with our middle kids, right? All of our kids during that time. So teachers kind of take a different role during that time and say, I'm going to put on the hat of an interventionist or a GT person and give students enrichment or intervention. So we're trying to address that with the addition of WIN. And high school's been having, you know, a move towards that for several years with their resource time and asking teachers to use that in that way as well. So that's one thing we're doing to try to address those middle kids, because you're exactly right.
Well, and we talked about that too when we talked about the progress monitoring that we added, especially with the new WIN time at elementary, because we talked about looking at those intervention groups and just keeping track of the progress monitoring of them. But when Teresa and Guy and I talked about it, we're like, it's important to make sure that we're tracking those middle kids and the GT kids too, to make sure those kids are making progress with this model as well. Because if those kids aren't also, and if we don't track that, then we don't know. So that's why we're progress monitoring all the kids, not just those that are struggling, so that we're making sure that there is continued progress.
And we got some pushback on that because people are used to that mindset of if they're not struggling, then strugglers we pay close attention to. So we said, no, we want to make sure everyone's growing. but now it's part of our culture, and I haven't heard complaints lately, so we're good.
The other thing I question too, after looking at those reports, our poverty levels go down in the middle school, go down in the high school. And I think that's a false, inaccurate, not false, an inaccurate description, because I think what happens is we just don't identify those families as much as the kids get older, because in elementary, we're all into their, we do so much with the families, and the kids start hiding a lot more. You know what I mean? They just don't want that to be known.
It's very typical as kids get older, they don't want their families to identify
Right.
them as that, so
And
your rates tend
that
to get
concerns me a
smaller,
lot,
even though it
too.
doesn't reflect
Yes.
true numbers maybe.
You're right.
Good. Like, again, I just say, I think you're all doing a great job, and keep doing it. And, like I said, I just hope we just look at the whole student and trying to develop an entire student, and not just one or two areas of the curriculum. And it sounds like that's what the direction you're moving in, and hopefully I pay more attention to these our report cards than I would the state guys. Okay, thanks, Teresa.
Thank
I know
you.
you're going, so thank you. Okay, Guy?
For the elementary, you should have my report. We did link the newsletter again. 3 things I'd like to point out is we finished up our explicit instruction trainings this last Thursday. And part of our discussions in our teams was if we could change one thing, what would we change? And in this report, I mentioned no hands raising. And to explain that a little further, we talked about trying to get more classroom engagement. And the teachers talked about, well, would they ask a question? Are we too quick to pick the 3 or 4 hands that always go up and call on those kids, and then the other ones get to tune out? By saying no hands are raised, trying some other strategies in place of that, we hope to increase our classroom engagement. So all students are tuned in. You don't have those students like myself in elementary that would have been very happy somebody else asking or answering the question, and I could just tune out and go off in my little sports world and live there. So that was one thing I wanted to point out. The second thing is we did have our parent-teacher conferences. The percentage was 90%. A little bit low for fall, but I do think that with the amount of seesaw interactions that are going on, I think seesaw has caused a lot of communication to happen. So I wasn't real disappointed, and I know the teachers are doing a good job communicating with the families yet. And then the third thing I wanted to mention was I put a track for the last point of my report. We've really, I think, made an effort to try to bring in student teachers whenever the universities have reached out. And I think it's important. We don't get to retain all of those people, but we have good teachers at the elementary level, and I think trying to create, we all know kind of the state of the teacher applicants that are out there. There's not a lot of them. Trying to keep these people interested in Tomahawk, I think it's kind of a win all the way around. So I just wanted to point out those 3 things.
Okay, when they, for the student teachers, how does the school determine where they go?
A lot of times it's, most of the student teachers we've had have had some connection, so they go into the universities that are placing them, and they get a little bit of a say and say, I'd really like to go back to Tomahawk. We have one that'll be starting in the fall that doesn't have a direct connection to Tomahawk, but is an area, and she wanted to come here.
Okay,
So
the student has some
they do have some say in it.
input into it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Guy,
Yeah.
do we provide sensitivity training to our teachers in relationship to the no hands thought process? Because it would be easy for a child to go home and say, I didn't know the answer, but the teacher's always picking on me, or, some scenario like that.
Yeah, they're not necessarily looking at it that way. They do, we've talked about that. Just a lot of them have, one of them talked about with that, they could call in a friend, kind of like if I don't know it, then I can reach out to this other student that might know it. So I think the teachers are aware of which students, so they're not trying to cause more problems for the student. But just to not be so quick, I think the idea is not to be so quick to pick those 2 or 3 hands that are always up, because we want to increase engagement for the whole group.
Are the parents being made aware that we're changing that thought process or not?
I don't know that we've made that known. It's something we decided to try for a month. It was something that
Okay.
Anita Archer said, maybe this is something you want to try. And you know, we went around with the support of April from CESA 9. Some of the teachers had already were going in that direction, so we said, why don't we try it for a month, find out what strategies people are using and what's working, and maybe the things that aren't working too, and we can talk about it at a staff meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Yeah, okay. Who wants to go next?
I'm next. All right, so you have my board report as well. Just a couple of things that I wanted to point out and follow up with all of you. One, on behalf of, I'm sure Ryan can mention this as well, really glad to hear about the fact that interest in a local report card, because that's the whole Redefining Ready initiative that we presented to you guys and that we are working on. So it's very exciting for us to hear, because we're working hard on that, trying to figure out our data points and how we're going to pull our data and how that's going to look. So that's exciting. Some things that are going on in the middle school right now. It's been a busy week. We just had our Upward Bound presentation to our 8th graders last week, and I linked that in there for those of you that aren't familiar with that. And Dawn had told me that the coordinator from Point reached out to her, and we already had a number of kids apply immediately after the presentation last week, so that's really good news. Shirley, who again got recognized, she led a phenomenal training with our 6th grade staff for our PBIS rewards pilot that we're going to start trying with our 6th grade group. She did a really good job with that. Also right now, this week is the week for our Engineering Tomorrow lab that's going on with our 8th graders, and we got a THS alumnus, Trey Balke, who is currently a sophomore at UMD. He's a guest speaker with our students to kind of show them, like, what is he doing right now? He's going into environmental engineering. You know, what did he kind of prepare in high school? How is his classwork going? So that's coming up here. I believe he's speaking to the kids on Thursday. So that'll be really interesting for them to hear someone that's literally just a recent graduate. So that's a pretty neat connection for the kids. And then linked in our newsletter and our 2 staff spotlights for December.
Any questions?
I love your staff spotlights. That's really fun, because you don't get to see in the building to see the new faces, especially, and it's neat.
Yep.
It's really neat.
Yeah, we already have them picked out for February too. I got the schedule sent, the email ready to go. They just don't know who they are yet. But yeah, it's been fun. And the kids have been like, why is so-and-so's picture up on? Because we have them that rotate through our message boards in school, so they can see them in the cafeteria. And one of the 6th graders was just asking me, why is Miss Neiman's picture up there? I'm like, well, read it. Look all about her. So yeah, it's kind of cool.
Any other questions? Thank you. Ryan?
Sure.
Okay. Good.
Good evening. So this month we wanted to focus on the whole student pillar of the strategic plan. Since the start of the school year, we have revitalized our Hatchet Pride Committee. The committee is comprised of our 2 PBIS coaches, so our Tier 1 and Tier 2 coach, our guidance counselor, 5 teachers from across the building, and myself. The committee's priority plan of work includes reviewing the building-wide Hatchet Pride behavioral matrix through the lens of creating a positive school and classroom environment. In order to get input from all of our high school staff, which we believe is really, really important, we decided that the committee would work through our monthly staff meetings with groups in order to get that input on what is working, what is no longer applicable, maybe some areas that we've missed and we need to revisit and add to our matrix. Those adjustments are needed to provide clear expectations and consistency for our students. To date, we are approximately about halfway through that work, and we hope to finish by the end of February. We know that providing a positive and consistent building-wide and classroom environment directly impacts our data points, such as our strong attendance rates. The coaches are also meeting regularly with our new staff members in order to provide them with specific training with the building-wide expectations. Really important to onboard them, make sure that they understand the expectations, get their feedback too, because they come from different places too, and they have great insight as well. So that has been very successful for us so far. Our PBIS coaches, along with the committee, have also been reviewing our school behavioral data. And as a result of this, we have been designing and implementing school-wide activities that take place during our resource period, which we called our Hatchet Pride Wednesdays. So our first activity, which happened last month, was focused on community and relationship building within that resource. And building those relationships, and then how perceptions can color the way we deliver and receive communication. The second activity, which will be next week, focuses on continued community and relationship building within that resource, along with a communication and listening activity. Finally, the coaches and I have also reviewed our Tier 2 interventions. So Tier 1 is universal, everybody gets. Tier 2 are those students that are identified as needing more supports based on maybe attendance, grades. What else did I have for that one? Referrals, maybe behavioral referrals. So they're looking at that criteria. We looked at that criteria to make sure that we're accurately identifying those students so that we can provide them with a strong connection to a staff member who will check in with them. Some check in daily, some check in weekly. We found this check-in connect system to be beneficial in improving both grades and attendance with these students.
Any questions?
Questions?
Good, thank you. Wendy, you got anything?
Not so much, though. I don't have a written report. I was out sick all week last week and I'm
Okay.
feeling better today. But just one area I want to touch on is we did have our behavioral specialist that comes in through CISA that comes in once a week. She did meet with all the elementary teams to go over the data from the BEST, to look at trends in classrooms, grade levels, and to work with staff on identifying, like Sherry talked about, those universal supports that all kids can benefit before they get to that Tier 2. And I'm really excited about also hearing all of the things that Guy and Stacy and Sherry have shared about our PBIS work, because Pupil Services runs the umbrella of it, but basically I approve the budgets and kind of direct the work. And they all met as a team and building level teams. We used to meet once a month and we'd all sit and do around the table talk about what we're doing, and it wasn't really productive. So they all worked really hard this summer in their team levels to really identify what do we need in our building and what do our staff need to support students and identify those needs. So they've all been really working hard to revamp that. So I'm excited, just like you guys are hearing, some of the things they're doing are really meeting those needs. So, and our next step will be moving towards that Tier 3 training then, and those really targeted once they get past those secondary and they need more additional help, social, emotional, mental health, those type of supports, and identifying with counseling, and then those PBIS teams where we need to focus those efforts. So that's it.
Okay. All right.
Woo! Just once.
All right,
I just had one thing that I was gonna throw out there. One of the pieces that we had talked about earlier in the summer when we all got together, and then is obviously a big part of our strategic plan, is that community engagement and communication piece. So I'm gonna do some community collaboration events. I don't know if those, we did put an ad out on JGP, I don't know if they ran it yet or not.
I
We'll
heard
put
it this
something out.
morning.
Did it go out
Yes.
already? Okay.
It's Tuesday.
And I will put something out on social media as well. So what we'll try to do is just meet at any of our local breakfast or coffee areas and kind of do just a very casual, have a cup of coffee, some breakfast if you want. Throw your concerns at me or questions or whatever you may have. So we'll do a series of those, hoping that we get a good turnout for them. But yeah, those will be coming up soon as well. So, and obviously all of you are invited as well, so please stop in. So.
Okay, thank you, Wendell. Anyone else? Okay, item 10, we've gone through that with Teresa already. So next item is 11, approve the first reading of the following new policies. The district and school report card and citizens advisory committee. Ann and Kay, any comments on those as we go forward?
It was it's on that committee too. We just met, we saw the minutes from the meeting, and there were several policies that we had to go over. This first policy was something that when we found, looking at the policies, we were missing this one, so that's what we were putting this in there. And the other one, the concerned citizens, that we felt that one was needed too. So two policies that'll have to come for the first and then the second reading.
Okay, anything else? Can I entertain a motion to approve the first reading of the new policies?
I so move. Swente?
Okay, second?
Long, second.
Okay, a motion is second to approve the first reading of the two new policies. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And then approve revisions to the following policies, field and other district-sponsored trips, educational opportunities, human growth and development, open enrollment program, bullying, and video surveillance and electronic monitoring. Anything else, comments you want to make?
There were just recommendations from Neola, then we consulted with, some of these we consulted with staff and various members of administration on some of these, and are moving these forward to the board.
Okay.
I do have a question on the human growth and development, and it's just like a grammatical thing perhaps, I don't know. In the section that's changed toward in the second page, it says the board does not authorize the committee to submit a recommendation to the board for the curriculum.
That goes back to the new policy that is a citizens advisory committee. So this policy requires that when we get to a point that we review and revise our human growth and development curriculum, that you would have the citizens advisory committee provide input. But by having that clause in there, it's not binding. The input is not something that the board is required to have. They take it under advisement. Does that make?
Yeah, it just, I guess the language is just strange. The board does not authorize the committee to submit a recommendation. But
they submit input, but they don't submit something that you act on.
Okay.
Okay, then? Any other questions? Hearing none, entertain a motion then to approve the revisions to the policies that we noted.
Swente, second.
Yeah, motion is second to approve the revisions to the policies listed. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 13, school board election update. What one?
Yep, so basically what we have here is just a list of dates to be aware of, nothing that you have to take action on, but this outlines the notice for non-candidacy for incumbents, as well as when all your paperwork would have to be filed, write-in candidates, when we would draw lots is included in here. So basically just the dates leading up to the April 4th and the deadlines leading up to the April 4th election.
Okay. Any questions on the calendar, or sorry, the election? Okay, adjustments to the 23-24 district calendar.
Okay, I attached the calendar in there for you to see. This is obviously the draft form. What we're looking at here really doesn't impact student days. We're looking at the beginning of the school year. Some of the feedback that we've heard, a lot of feedback that we've heard over the past, I would say 3-4 years, at the beginning in our August in-service, is that teachers need more time in those days leading up to the return of students to prepare both for the open house events and as well as students entering our classroom. With our strategic plan and some of the things that we've already talked about tonight in terms of data and how we move the needle forward and other things, we also have a need at the beginning of the year for a number of different professional development development pieces, including our annual data retreat, and looking at that, not just data retreat in terms of academic data, but also looking at our behavior data as well. And what has happened is typically we try to hold that in early August sometime. But we always coordinate with CISA 9. They bring in consultants to work with us on some of that stuff and to lead us through some different activities as we start to write, develop goals and commitments. And one of the problems is, we don't necessarily have the specific ability to pick those dates all the time. So what we're trying to do is make that more consistent. The other piece is, we never seem to be able to get everybody that we need at the table to collaborate around those goals due to late summer vacations or other pieces that come into play. So, in looking at all of that, obviously the goal to get more time in the classroom, also the goal to get the district professional development requirements out of the way. What I'm proposing here is that we tap into, traditionally we've had 4 days that are either floating or flexible days that teachers basically are required to do on their own over the course of the summer. So we would reduce that to 2 flexible floating days and put those days hard scheduled in this schedule on the 22nd and the 23rd. Then we would take and have those dates, we're early enough in the game that we can schedule with CISA, we can make sure that all of our professional development happens on those 2 days, leaving the remaining 5 for our staff to prepare for the upcoming school year. I did float this out there for some staff feedback. I've got, feedback on both sides, some that say we prefer that we would have the flexibility of having those days. And other people saying we like the idea of being able to have all the people that we need there to collaborate and make the commitments that we need to make at the beginning of the year. So I would say I had equal feedback on both sides of it. I also looked at and put some feelers out through some different groups that I'm a part of to see what other districts are doing, not just in our region, but across the state. And I think the highest number that I've come across is 3. Actually, I take that back. There was one school that had an hour commitment that was over a much longer time that it traded off days in there. But the vast majority was 1 or 2 that they had were full 8 days. So we would be pretty much in line with what most districts offer in that capacity too. So that's the proposal to change. And then I did make one more tweak. If you look at the month of October, at our last PAC meeting at CISA, we talked again about our, last fall we had the Common PD Day, where we were able to get our teachers together with folks from Antigo, as well as folks from Elko and Mosinee. So we're looking at next year's calendar and who had, the October, the fall dates, and when we could put this together. Originally on the calendar that we approved, I had that in-service day on the 26th, followed by a vacation day on the 27th, and then that led into the weekend. And with this change, there were no other schools currently that have those dates, but there were a number of them that had the 27th. So I would propose to make that tweak as well, so if we do decide to be a part of one of those cohorts and collaborative events again, that we would have the opportunity to do that, and it still leads into a 4-day weekend that we had originally planned for our staff. But those are the changes. The only other tweak would be moving new teacher orientation back a week to the 15th and 16th of August to make room for the 2 days.
Any questions on the calendar?
And the whole week of Thanksgiving is on.
That's right.
Wow.
So if you look at this calendar, we're able to do that, I think, because of the way June falls out. We always try to end in the first week in June, and because that's a full week, if you look at this year's calendar, we have like a Friday, a Thursday and a Friday, I think. So it gave us the opportunity to add, if you remember when we did this last year in February, one of the things that we were hearing a lot is we don't have enough time in our schedule for staff to regroup, refresh, for students to get away, and that vacation piece. So that was a hotbed topic when I was working on this calendar. And because I'd love to say that we could offer this much and still be out the first week in June, but I'm not sure that that's gonna always be the case on how it falls out. But it does work in this calendar nicely.
Does the spring break always occur the last week of March?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Get back to my agenda here. next thing is board referrals, and,
I think this would need, I'm not sure, but I think this would need approval just because it was.
oh, okay.
It's a
Okay. Then I'd entertain a motion to approve the 23-24 district calendar.
So move first.
I'll second.
Okay, motion second to approve the 23-24 district calendar. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Okay. Board referrals, selection of the WASB delegate, anyone interested?
Well, I already thought I was.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I've got, I mean, if you wanna have it over and someone else wants to.
No.
No, no, no.
You're doing it by
Tag, you're it.
Then can I say something else?
I don't know.
As the delegate, I have the resolutions that are going to be voted on, and I'd like either and/or the board to look at them and give their opinions, or Wendell, if the board's not interested, or would rather not, but maybe on the January meeting.
Okay.
There's a few of them,
There always is.
but I'd like a consensus.
Can we get copies to look them over
Yeah.
between now and then?
I received those today, so I can get them earlier, or we can include them in the packet for the January meeting, whichever you
If we
prefer.
can get them before,
Get 'em earlier.
earlier.
Good.
Yeah.
Because I
think
know
it would-
that's quite a bit of reading.
It'd be good to have a board discussion on them, or recommendations.
Okay, yeah, if you could get them to us
We can scan those.
a couple weeks early would be nice. Yeah.
Tell
Okay?
Nice holiday.
Thank you.
We're getting snow days.
Yeah, 2 days.
I need to make
Anything
my
else,
notes.
Dick?
'cause when we
Wendell, I want to make sure that you would give us any recommendations on those proposals, on those resolutions at the meeting, just so that we can be informed from your perspective as to how they impact this district.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I had one thing that I thought might be of interest to everybody. Jennifer Black just reached out to me recently. Now she's the chair of our Champions for the Tomahawk School District. She was just selected to serve on the board for a 3-year term with the Wisconsin Alliance for Excellent Schools. So she said she'll continue to advocate for Tomahawk schools, and in the spring, they'll be at the Capitol advocating for public schools. So I think that's,
Good,
she continues to support us, and in a great way.
good choice. She's not afraid to speak up.
No,
Okay, anyone else? I just have one other thing. Wendell, the board would like to present you with this Christmas present, gift, whatever. Appreciate it, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you and your family.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
if I could add something to that, if you'll notice on the front of your gift, that's a card. On the other envelope, yeah, that suffered some trauma.
Yeah, I see that.
And Helen Palmquist would like me to send her deepest regrets.
That's good. Thank you very much.
Okay, anything else? Okay, then, next item is to go into closed session. So I entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Long second.
Motion is second to go into closed session. Roll call. Please, please.
Hirsch,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Luba,
Yes.
Swensey,
Yes.
Baloo,
Yes.
Zimmerman,
Yes.
Hughesby,
Yes.